I look at the window and the gap and the opportunity. And the biggest shot I have of all, which you will never be able to deny because you're married to her, every time I see him, he goes out of his way to tell me that he really, really is close to you and Megan. So I know you work with him, but I call Megan, who was equally hurt by the time that he tried to bankrupt me, as she was around watching TV, listening to all the shit, right? And she had to live it too. So her answer to me is, Dad, are you kidding? So he's lying again. That's from your wife. Was he at your house for Thanksgiving?
No, not for Thanksgiving.
Was he coming for Christmas?
No, I don't believe so.
Anytime soon?
I mean, they're welcome, yeah, but we don't have any plans on the calendar, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So, like, if I tell you I'm going to see you, I see you. If I tell Joe Gomez I'm going to see him, I see him. If I tell Dino, I mean, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. I don't know what to say. He did it, and I'll let the fans be a judge. I will say this: in asking why they put him on it, they basically said to me that they wanted people to see what I had to put up with to end up where I am today.
Wow,
and that's a good enough answer. That's the kind of people that he actually was worse for me than Jim Herd. And worse for the business.
Okay, now let's talk about that now. How was he worse for the business? He turned a profit for WCW for the first time.
For 1 year.
No, not 1 year. 95, 96, 97, 98. The most profitable years of any wrestling company ever were enjoyed by Eric Bischoff at the time in WCW.
Oh, I don't know that. Then scratch that remark. I thought it was just 1 year.
Now they were printing cash, man, in 96, 97, 98. It was crazy. It started to peter and taper a little bit in 99. Of course, 2000 was just off the rails. But it's fascinating to go back and look at this, because even Eric, when I talked to him, and he was very critical of Crockett, and I argued, hey man, Crockett only lost money in 87 and 88. The other years were all profitable, and that is not the story of WCW. They were losing cash.
Yeah, but that's all because of the way it was managed.
Yes, that was my point. Is I don't think we can necessarily blame the guy on top, and I know that's becoming fashion.
But you can't blame the talent either.
Well, that was my point. I don't think when I say the guy on top, I don't mean necessarily the guy running the show. I mean whoever the champion is. Like, I think Meltzer is the first guy who really made it fashionable or in fashion to say, well, Kevin Nash is the worst drawing WWF champion of all time. And it's like, okay, well, listen, that may be the case, but everybody who was the champion during that era was the worst drawing champion of all. The business was cyclical, and it had hit an all-time low. And it wouldn't have mattered if the belt was on Diesel or Brett or Shawn or anybody else in that era. Business was going to be down. And I don't think that's necessarily the talent's fault. So when he sort of wags his finger at you and says, well, he wasn't a draw. Well, history would show that house show business turned around for WCW with you and Savage on top. That's what turned it around, not the NWO. Now, the NWO certainly got hotter than it ever had been before. I mean, got to give the devil his due there, but there was no end to the storyline. And I think you could argue that as much as it was the greatest angle in wrestling history, it might have kind of accidentally hurt wrestling long term, because it made the possibility of a cool heel. And once upon a time, man, it was pretty clearly defined. These are the good guys, these are the bad guys. But the NWO is really the first time I remember it being fun to cheer the bad guys, like the majority of the fans, not just the quote unquote smart fans in Philadelphia who were big Horseman fans. But no matter where you went, the NWO was positioned to be cool, and WCW at times, maybe not so much. We've got the swagger and confidence of the NWO against, no offense, Hacksaw Jim Duggan. That feels like something out of the 80s versus something brand new. It made WCW look kind of goofy, and it made the cool heel commonplace. And then you run across a guy like MJF, and I think the reason people gravitate to that character so much is he's not trying to be a cool heel. He wants you to hate him. And that's the way wrestling used to be, right, Rick?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the big picture. I didn't know that Savage and I had turned the house show business around. And actually, I don't think I've ever claimed to be a huge draw in the 90s. but I drew a lot of money in the 80s. He wouldn't know anything about it.
Right.
And it's kind of like, it's so easy here, man. When you're my age and you know it all, it's so easy. Eric wouldn't know anything about driving 3,000 miles a week. Eric wouldn't know anything about being a real athlete. You Google Eric, and the biggest line, the greatest line I saw was what Hogan said about him. He'd be cutting meat in Minneapolis if he hadn't come to WCW. Google it.
You're having fun with this, are you not?
Google it. Hey, hey, and Tony Khan can call him a visionary too, but Tony had never drove 3,000 miles. Only difference between Tony Khan and him is Tony Khan is a man of his word, and he keeps his word, and he really likes people, and he has friends.
Yeah.
But in terms of being part of the business, you know, Kevin Nash, you know why he does great in his podcast? Because he's lived the business.
Yes.
I was there when Kevin was sitting in the bleachers in Marietta.
Right.
He wanted to be part of it. He went through the shit that we all go through to become somebody famous. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash are the reason the NWO worked. And Hulk jumping over made it even more. But the four people that made that thing work are Sting, Nash, Hall, and Hogan. Not Bischoff, not Flair. Sting, Hall, Nash, and Hulk. Eric Bischoff just jumped on camera.
Did you